Snowy peaks and open skies, northern winds whisper goodbyes. Dreams take root where the maples grow, a land of promise where rivers flow. Welcome to the north, where the light shines so bright, chasing every dream beneath the stars tonight. Every step you take, a journey to belong, building futures here where hearts grow strong. Lakes like mirrors, reflecting pride, from the Rockies to the ocean tide. Voices mingle in a tapestry, a world united.
All right, everyone. I thought I would just jump on here and just do a spontaneous live to chat about this election. I didn't really promote this or announce it. I actually jumped on a podcast early this morning with my good friend Stephen Mearns and Deanna Okanachoff on the Borderlines podcast. So if you haven't followed that one, head over there and we can dive deep into the real discussions, the technical discussions about the election. But this one is as much just about what the future really holds for immigration. And let's face it, I think lots of people are thinking, well, it's going to be really confusing. We don't know what the Liberals are going to do. We don't know what the future of immigration is going to be. Well, we actually do. And what we can see, at least from this stage, is that there is not going to be a lot of change. So the same things that we've been talking about regarding strategies for how you might be able to stay in Canada longer, people that are wondering what their chances are for getting an ITA through express entry. Can I bring my family to Canada? What's the outlook for parents and grandparents? What are the abilities, for me to actually bring my spouse here in a relatively short period of time, or do I have to wait for months and months? All of these things are pretty much answered. And when we have a Liberal government, and I want to make sure everybody understands, I'm just going to share my screen. Let's see if I have it here. I've got a bunch of different, let's see. I don't know if I have one of just me. Maybe. Let's slide over here. Okay, I do. Let me adjust this here. So this is what we're looking at. And maybe I can enlarge this just a little bit to make it easier to see. So if you recall before, the Liberals had a minority government, and it looks like we're destined for a minority again. If they got 172 seats here, I think it's 172, that would then result in there being a majority. But alone, it doesn't look like they are total. If the ridings they're leading in, if it results in them remaining at 168, they won't be able to just make whatever decisions they want without support. But that support, even though the numbers have shifted, is still likely going to come from the NDP. Now, Jagmeet Singh is out. The Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, did not win his riding, and that's telling. And the Liberals have very close, come very close to a majority, which is, they ran a masterful campaign. And so what this means is that generally speaking, as long as they can get the NDP on side, which I can't see why they wouldn't, all of the plans that they've had in the future are going to remain the same. So there shouldn't be a lot of change with immigration. And I was talking with my wife just a couple days ago, and I said, what happens if we do get a Conservative government? We know that their immigration policies will be much more strict, and they're going to reduce things a lot. And what will it mean, really, if they tie the immigration to housing builds, things like that? If they were to follow through with that, what would it mean for my practice? I'm a very transactional lawyer. My practice is I help people with their applications, things like that. We do appeal work. It's not a large part of our practice, but and judicial reviews and things like that. But what will that mean for the future of my practice? And I said, maybe I won't be practicing immigration anymore. And as I talked to her, I said, well, I wonder what I would do, because I don't really like the general practice of law. I could do that, but if I had other alternatives, what might I consider? And I was thinking, I really love AI, and maybe I would become an AI consultant and help other lawyers with their practices and develop efficiencies and things like that. But then we had this result, which the polls were pretty accurate, really. We had an idea that this is what was going to happen based on the polls. And so last Saturday night, I had an opportunity to step back and say, okay, well, what happens if the Conservatives don't win? And there hasn't been any miscommunication here. I've been I was hoping for a Conservative victory, but at the same time, I realized there's so much division, there's so much animosity. Politics has become so just full of vitriol, and if you're not with us, you're kind of the enemy. Has been the view. And one thing I will give Mark Carney credit for is in his acceptance speech, I guess, last night, he talked about the need for unity. And I think that is something that this country desperately needs. We need to be united. And coming from Alberta, which is pretty much, aside from 3 ridings, I think there might be 2 Liberals and 1 NDP, everything's blue. And I think for a long time, Albertans have felt a little bit disenfranchised, and there's been a lot of tension, with our Premier and Prime Minister Trudeau, and even with, Prime Minister Carney now. And I just hope that Prime Minister Carney can find a way to unite and to not create more division. And I think, from that standpoint, I'm remaining very optimistic. And ultimately the future for all of you is not going to be much different than how it was before the election. And and that's one of the things that I wanted to share. Now, for those of you who are tuning in, I want this to be a lot of a discussion about your thoughts on this. Okay. Chaitanya says, tough fight put on by my Conservatives, some unpredictable times ahead of us. Well, and he says, tough fight put on. Yes. And the reality is, I think there isn't going to be as much of an unpredictable future for immigration, like I said, because largely, the policies, it's like swapping out Trudeau for Carney, by and large. So there's not a lot of change that's going to be happening. Parth, I'll give you a shout out. Good to see you. Okay, so Hossein says, good afternoon, Mark. Please say something about the prediction regarding the education category draw and possibly CRS score. Okay, this is something, with these predictions here, with the crystal ball, which we have. And if I reach over here and rub my crystal ball, I can tell you that I think those draws are going to start to occur. Now, they wouldn't have created it if they didn't intend to use it. And so I suspect that this year, things are going to move slowly, but I can't help but feel, with Prime Minister Carney's ties to the Century Initiative, his the folks that are in the Century Initiative, some of the leaders of it, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but the Century Initiative is essentially the goal is to achieve 100 million Canadians by the year 2100. And so if we pull this up, I'll just share this with you, because I think not a lot of people are talking about this, but it's important that you understand. Oh, let's see, which one am I using? I'm gonna let's see, maybe this was the one I want. This one. Here we go. Sorry, I've got too many things going on. Okay, so if we look at the Century Initiative, you'll see about, learn more about us. If we click on it, it's actually not formatted very well for viewing on a computer. But if you click on it, it's interesting when you scroll, it looks like it's just moving it all over the place here. Give me a second. I'm going to go to about who we are. Okay, so this guy right here, the first one, he just slipped away on us. This guy is important, Mark Wiseman, the chair of the board of the chairman of the board, essentially, of directors, senior advisor and chairman of Canada, Lazard and senior advisor Boston Consulting Group. The reality is he is good buddies with Mark Carney, our prime minister. And this Century Initiative is all about, like I said, trying to increase the numbers by 2100. And you have to actually dig. Before, it used to be very upfront. But at the end of the day, you have to dig quite a ways to actually get to the spot where they say, hey, this is really what we're driving, is to get the population up. That's why it's the Century Initiative. And so, so just keep that in mind, because that is going to be driving to a large extent what happens with the country. it's going to be very interesting to see how they deal with infrastructure, with the housing, with with the social network that we have here within our socialist country of Canada, to see how that is going to support the growth. But I suspect that they're going to find ways to keep numbers climbing, and that's what they want. So I just hope that they can find a right balance to manage the pressures and the strains on their infrastructure right now, without at the same time, tossing all of you guys to the wind, essentially. So those that are here where they say they want you to leave. Now we're going to talk today just a little bit about some of the strategies that have not gone away that you want to focus on. But generally speaking, things are going to be pretty status quo, subject to what I believe is really a blip. So all of these reversals of policies, these, we want this many people to leave, even though the platform says one thing, I'm not entirely buying it. We're going to have a new immigration minister, probably, I suspect, that will be in place. We'll have to see how it ultimately plays out, because it seemed like the cabinet were all just kind of placeholders, just to give the impression of change, so they could try to distance themselves from the previous, decision makers, because it's the same party. But I think they are going to slowly reverse what they have done. That's my belief. I think numbers are going to increase, the annual levels targets. I would not surprise me if they climbed back up to the mid 400s or higher. We know that in the platform of the Liberals, they indicated a strong emphasis on supporting high skill, the best and the brightest individuals. But at the same time, they've announced very ambitious plans to increase French even more, which, I'm sorry, you guys, I feel really, really bad about this. What do you do right now? Every single one of you should be studying French. Simple as that. If you're not studying French, then you are going to lose out on opportunities. Every single one of you. And it's sad, because I was talking with Stephen in the podcast this morning, the Borderlines podcast. And, one of the things he said is, people are literally quitting their jobs to focus on studying French full time. That cannot be what the Liberal government wants, but it's what they're getting. And, some people are saying, it's very prejudicial to some communities, some countries. So it's a backhand way of reducing the number of immigrants from certain countries by just elevating French. Well, the ripple effects to that are astounding. So you have individuals who rank really low with respect to skilled work and the hot, best and brightest, who are getting through just because they speak French. And then other individuals they get through, they're hitting kind of those base levels. And even if they hit kind of the NCLC level 7 with their French, then have just almost a guaranteed ticket to ITA. So I strongly want to encourage you going forward. One thing we take away from this is that French is even more important now than it ever was before. And so I welcome your thoughts on this. So when are the draws going to happen overall? Well, we know that if they want to build houses, they want to have growth, they're going to have to do those draws. When it comes to education, I'm still at a loss as to why that's even on the list, but it's there. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. Amy, good to see you. Thanks for connecting in. Aurora says, hello, Mark. Good to see you, Mark. Missed the last live. Hoping for the best for both offshore and onshore applicants with this new beginning. Well, we'll see. Like, the hard part is that it's probably not that much of a new beginning. And in reality, if the Conservatives were elected, we probably would see even more stringent immigration policy. But going forward, what we saw before, and I really think that a lot of the changes were very political in nature. So the reason they flip-flopped back and did the 180 is, it was to really help to curtail and separate themselves from what, Prime Minister Trudeau and their own party had done to try to get a reset. But in practice, I'm not so convinced that their goal is to reduce immigration. I think it still is to grow it. And like I said, that's the mandate of Prime Minister Carney, is really, whether he said it or not, the Century Initiative is really driving a lot of the thoughts. And, when he has advisors that are, literally helping to shape the direction that Canada is going, you have to pay attention to who those people are that are driving the ship. Leon says, hi, Mark, from the US. Okay, so this is where I want to address all those people that are watching from the US. Listen, never before has there been a better time for you to consider Canada. Never before. And I'm actually going down to the US, to Denver, to meet with a bunch of US immigration attorneys down there, and just to talk about what's happening in Canada. And when people are in the US and they do not like where the regime's going down there and they want to make changes, there's no better time than right now, because I think Trump is actually really happy with having Carney and as the prime minister. And people that disagree with Trump or don't accept his policies or follow what he's doing, or agree with what he's doing, he's happy probably to see them move to Canada. So we'll see how this plays out. But this is one thing I know, our office is extremely busy. So anyone who's a US American looking, they're looking to come to Canada, by all means, reach out. Don't hesitate to book a consult. And yes, Cyber Ninja, still no CEC draw. We will have to see. Levine, hello from Ontario. Good to see you. Rushi says, will CEC draws even take place? Yes, they will. And I think a lot of this has just been kind of delay tactics to just wait till they got the government, the election's done, and to figure out where they're at. Now they're going to reset. And remember, when a new election occurs, the prime minister has a tendency to issue letters to the various ministers with the direction that the prime minister wants those ministers to take. And that has been, those letters have been a really critical piece of information that provides the direction that the government is going to go on particular issues. So we'll have to see when those come out. Usually it takes a little bit of time for them to be developed and then sent out, and then they're published. And that's been something that the Liberals have done. So we'll watch and see how that plays out going forward. Okay, we've got Bernard, who's connecting in on LinkedIn. Good to have you here. Great to have you. He says, I agree with you. Well, we'll see how far. I'm not sure exactly how many of my previous comments that ended up that you agree with, but thanks so much. Okay, Andrew says, will they reduce immigration targets further? I don't believe so. I really don't. Like I said, I believe that they want more immigration. They're going to have to figure out a way to get more housing builds and to actually do something, because they had a lot of time to try to sort this out. And they're the ones, the Liberal Party is the ones who got themselves into this situation. But they are definitely going to be, sticking with their intentions. Now, within the platform, it indicated that they were going to hold steady, that they weren't slamming the door shut. They're just kind of, keeping the peephole open in terms of the direction that they were going with immigration, but they were just pausing to regroup. I think they're going to very quickly continue down the path they were before. I think that's my belief anyways. Aurora says, Mark, predictions for the OMP tech draw. Until they make a decision to restore the nominations to the provinces, everything is going to be ground to a halt with all of the PNPs. So this is something now that the new immigration minister, whoever it is, and it's possible that Minister Bendea sticks around. Like maybe she'll be, continue on in that portfolio. I don't know. I'd be surprised if she does, but regardless, we'll see how it plays out. But I really, and have always truly believed that economics should be given to the provinces. But the Liberal government is really about centralization. They really are big government. And they want to retain control and power at the federal level and not so much with the provinces. So although they have agreements with the provinces, they have the discretion to decide how many nominations to allocate to each of the provinces. And personally, I think provinces should receive 75% and the federal government should retain 25% of the economic immigration processes and selection. But that's probably not going to be the case. Okay, yes, Batman, Liberals have mentioned attracting skilled talents from the US. Will there be a new pathway to PR to attract H-1B workers in Canada? That's a good question. Now, one of the things that we are going to see if there's this continued, polarization in the US is that many professionals are going to choose to come to Canada. And, regardless of H-1B programs or things like that, we're talking US citizens. And I'm having a ton of consultations with Americans exploring options for coming to Canada. And, I've had a number of them congratulate me this morning on the election and the Liberal victory. And ultimately, the pathways, I think, are going to be expanded. Now, the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, the CUSMA agreement between the US and Canada and Mexico, that agreement is up for negotiation here in a little bit. But ultimately, I don't see Canada closing the door to US citizens, and others coming from the US, which, Will they do another H-1B? I don't see that right now because I think they want to be more strategic with it. It doesn't do any good to have someone coming over on an H-1B if there isn't a job, and especially with how they've gutted tech. So the fact that STEM really isn't STEM, it's SEM, SEM now. I think there's going to be, H-1Bs. They're not, granted, they're not all tech. Sometimes they fill in other industries, but I think ultimately we're just going to have to see. Well, you guys can see it as well as me. If they're not drawing tech in any of the provinces right now, that does not seem to be high on their list of priorities. But healthcare, absolutely. Other occupations, for sure. Okay, AK says, I think if a PM works on boosting the country's economy, eventually the country will require workers. Yes, absolutely. Require workers for that. And just to keep the growth pace consistent, country would definitely need immigrants. Absolutely. And even though the numbers have been slowed and the public opinion has kind of shifted, and that really is on the Liberals to some extent, the decisions that they make and their decisions to reverse has been to try to regain confidence and support for immigration. But I think the long-term play, AK, is absolutely ongoing increased immigration. So no doubt about that. Harris, good to see you. Spider-Man, we got Batman and Spider-Man's in the house. He says, Spidey's saying hi from Mark Miller's district. I'm not sure whether he reelected. Yep, he was absolutely reelected. Okay, Ankit says, will 495 be possible? I don't think they're just going to jump back next year in the annual levels plans and go back to 495. But it would not surprise me if they reversed the downward trend of immigration. Now, remember, they said they want to reduce, at least this is their platform, they want to reduce the overall temporary residents to 5% of the overall population. Well, how do you get there? Well, you increase the numbers of permanent residents that you take in, which allows you to transition more TRs to PR, and then they're no longer a temporary resident. They then fall on the side of the permanent resident equation. They're no longer temporary residents. That whole transitioning, increase the overall numbers and then spend more time transitioning TRs to PR. That's really how they meet that magical 5% that they've identified for, I think it's the end of 2027. And they, to be honest, at the rate they're going, they have kind of slowed the climb of the percentage. It was up, I don't know, what was it, 7.7 or something like that. And now it's down to about 7.2 or 7.0 since they started enacting these measures. And it's hard. Like every day I have consultations with you guys where you're struggling to figure out what to do. And we within the firm have been working on a lot of different solutions for people. And the consultations are wonderful. I can do up to 10 a day sometimes. And, just visiting with people, talking about strategy, looking at their situations, and just trying to provide hope. And that's what we're doing. All right. Harris says, what are the chances for 449 scores under health category? Well, it's possible. You're also dealing with doctors. You're dealing with other, professionals in healthcare. One of the realities is they tend to be older, so they're losing age points. If they've been working in Canada, then you can reclaim some of those age points just through, the number of years you've got of Canadian work experience. But I think generally speaking, the healthcare category, I think it's still going to be fairly high, but they have to do rounds, right? They actually have to start doing that. So I think the likelihood initially is pretty low for it to drop down to 449, but Harris, start learning French. Remember, if you guys can hit a level 5, then even though your permits are expiring, you can transition with your employer very easily to a Francophone Mobilité work permit. Okay. All right. VJ says, not in favor of the Century Initiative. However, coming from a densely populated state, 60 million, in my opinion, Canada needs population increase to better run the country in a longer term. Well, the reality is the infrastructure, like we have a large country, we have room for people, but the problem is the infrastructure. If you're not building houses to keep up with the demand, if you are not building hospitals, if you're not hiring healthcare, we are a socialist country. If you do not have the infrastructure generally to support the growth, then that's when things fall apart. And that's what has really driven the Liberals' decision to just completely flip-flop on their previous, growth, high growth initiatives. So, all right. Levine says, what are the chances for PR for religious workers? Well, it just depends, Levine. It depends on the work experience you have in Canada. It depends on your CRS score. Depends on a lot of factors. And, it's possible. It just, like I said, usually consultations, we can kind of canvas that. And sometimes religious workers have other work experience too that they can add to the mix. So yeah, it's not easy for sure, Levine, but it's possible. Let's see what we have next. Let's see here. All right. Hilamani says, thank you for your hard work. Benefits all of us. You're welcome, Hilamani. Thanks for connecting. Hang in there. You're going to be close to your citizenship, my friend. Really close. Okay, Sarab. Okay, I haven't read all these, but let's see what he says. He says, great to hear that you explore another option to channelize professional in survival, making parallel options ready for unforeseen situations. Great thought. I like your optimism and approach. Well, yeah, like at the end of the day, I got to where I'm at because I worked my tail off. I worked hard. I studied. I learned. I took advantage of every opportunity that I had. And, I literally worked from a poor farm kid where we basically raised our own food. We grew our own gardens. We had our own livestock, and, we had our chickens and our cows and, ducks and geese and all these kinds of things on our little family farm. And through the winters, we actually lived on what we grew, and we didn't have a lot of cash, and we were quite poor. But the thing I love most about this country was the fact that I had the ability to go through. I got student loans. I worked my tail off while I was going through school. I did as well as I could to be able to get into law school. Well, first I got my teaching degree, then I went to law school. Then I worked hard in law school, was able to get a good job at a national firm. And that set me up to have a good opportunity to pursue, raising my family and in a wonderful province and just having just tremendous support of this network of people, friends and family that just helped us to get where we are today. And it's just it's almost my prayer, I guess, that the decisions the Liberals make will be with a view to those young generations that are coming up. And they largely got elected in large part by the boomers, by those who have already benefited from all the amazing things in the country. And granted, they're the ones who created it. They worked for it. There's no doubt about it. But at the same time, sometimes the decisions that are made can actually undermine the ability of future generations to succeed, like the cost of houses and not even being able to afford a home. And I can't imagine that is what the average Canadian wants, is just to be renting for the rest of their lives. But that's sometimes the messages that we were getting from the Liberals. You don't need to own a vehicle even. And the push for electric vehicles and all those kinds of things, it makes sense, but it has to be in a measured, predicted, and just planned way. And I think that's what we've seen as being a problem with our immigration in Canada, is that it has not been in a measured, planned way. It's been really knee-jerk or reacting to whatever public opinion, right? That's why they took such a reverse approach to this and just flip-flopped and really, oh boy, my heart goes out to you guys, because they did not need to do that. And many of you have been suffering because of that. So I hope that they start to reverse those things. Okay. Levine posted a super here. She says, what are the chances for PR for religious workers? Oh, I already got to that one, Levine. So we covered that a little bit. Okay. Let's see who else we have here. Let's see what else we have here. AK says, why would skilled worker come to Canada? Isn't there a good pay difference between Canada and the US? Yeah, understand, AK. For sure. People make way more money in the US. And up until recently, when all of the quotas were put in place, the restrictions for permanent residents, the numbers, just the challenge, and there being so many people wanting to become immigrants in Canada. But before that, Canada actually had a pathway to permanent residence. And it's not that it doesn't now, but it's really focused on those with high human capital. In the US, you very well know, probably, AK, you can go there and work on an H-1B or, whatever kind of temporary work status you have, and never have a pathway to permanent residence ever. And I think it's even getting more difficult now. We're seeing work permits for Canadians looking to go down to the US getting refused in mass at the pre-inspection, pre-flight inspection centers across the airport, the various airports when people are flying to the US to apply for their permits. Like, we're seeing tons of refusals. And so, the US is definitely closing their borders, and it's not that Canada has them open. At the end of the day, like I said, they're trying to get 1 million people out by the end of 2025 here, and probably 2 million by 2027. But ultimately, the yeah, like, are that many people really going to leave? Well, I know some when their documents expired, they're not going to stay and be illegal. They're going to go home. But yeah, ultimately that's the pathway. That was the dream always in Canada, is to have the ability to, to benefit from the West here, and to be able to have an opportunity to grow and not be tied to, whatever inability that you have for upward mobility in your country, whether there's a caste system that pushes you down, whether you just can't escape, just a moderate low class lifestyle because you just can't afford to go to school or get the education or whatever it is. And then Canada has an opportunity for you. And that's the dream. That is the Canada dream that I love. And I just hope that the Liberals will keep this in mind as they go forward and as they make those decisions. Okay. Okay, Roshan says, what do you think about the French draws? Do you think they will give more points to French, which is showing now in Sierra's calculator? Okay, so Roshan, it showed in the past. It kind of popped up as kind of a potential. And ultimately, they can do all kinds of things, including creating a separate program for French that has whatever quota they're looking for, but only French apply. And it's outside of Quebec. Like, they could do that. But right now, I'm not happy with the way the French draws are designed, because it is completely punishing everyone else that doesn't speak French. And I don't think it's getting at what it's supposed to get at. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. Okay. This is a good question. AK says, once again, what about the processing times? And we've seen those climb astronomically. Now, the layoffs, I don't think they've fully entered into full layoff mode. And we'll just have to see, because understand, like, there's going to be taxing. There's going to be tons of taxing. Are they going to continue to lay off, or are they just going to continue to go into debt? Well, Mark Carney, our prime minister, has indicated he has no concerns about pushing Canada further into debt. And hopefully they have a plan to deal with that. And I suspect they probably do. Well, theoretically. All right. Continuing on here. Yeah, I agree with Chow here. He says, I hope the federal government gives provinces a bigger say on immigration to hopefully they can improve and continue the PNP programs in a better way. And I agree. I hope that myself. I don't know if that's the case, because like I said, maybe under the Conservatives, they might have considered doing that, but under the Liberals, it's really hard because, lately with the tension that exists between the province and the feds, they have been very harsh when it comes to their decision-making. And to reduce the numbers the way they did, that was all designed to just force people out of the country. Okay. Okay. Aurora. Oh, this is just a general question. She says, does the creation of multiple profiles for an applicant cause issues during the processing? Does it need to explain an LOE if other account is ineligible and no longer is in use? Well, like, you just don't want to, there's no purpose to having multiple applications in the queue. But ultimately, yeah, if you had multiple with a different GC key or things like that, then I would just address it. I would address it. Now, if they become ineligible and then you open up another one, that's different, like within your same GC key. But you do need to be careful, because I've had immigration come back where there's been inconsistencies, where someone has submitted a profile in one GC key and then submitted another profile with different information because they weren't paying attention. And then the officer's like, well, what's going on? You've got this other application. I know this is you, but the information is different. So which one is correct, and where are you misrepresenting? So you have to be really careful about that. Okay, let's see here. Cyber Ninja says, hey, Mark, I trust you more than anyone else. Can you tell me if 494 CEC has hope? I think it does, but it's going to take some time for that hope to materialize. So hopefully you can leg it out on your work permit. Okay. Okay, Rupinder says, sir, if we have work experience outside Canada, will it give me points if it is different from in Canada not code? Well, yeah, like, understand that your points, once you meet the eligibility criteria for CEC, and Rupinder, I recommend you book a consult. Once you hit the eligibility for CEC, you can accumulate foreign work experience or count foreign work experience, and it doesn't have to be continuous. It doesn't have to be in the same knock. It just has to be skilled, paid, and you've actually performed those duties, and, at least 15 hours a week if you're claiming part-time, or 30 if it's full-time. So, okay. Chip says, I'm at 540. Hang in there, my friend. It's going to happen. It is going to happen. He says, 540. I'm wondering if they are still conducting CC draws. They are. They just have not done it. Okay. Graskowski says, hi, Mark, does this mean regularization of illegals? No, I don't believe so. when you have so many people that are already legal, I can't see them just creating an amnesty program for illegals. But here's the thing. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Okay, Ruhan, what's the score for IELTS required for immigration? Unless you have an 8 in listening and 7 in the other abilities, it's going to be really tough to even be considered. And yes, Sarab talks about the OINP. I know, no draws since last year. Yeah, everything is slowed down because the numbers have been cut in half. Okay, let's see here. Okay, Hassan says, hey, Mark, thanks for the knowledge you share. Is the draw for rural renewal stream based on points or profession? Understand that the rural renewal stream is the program in Alberta. And so the community endorsement is the thing that's, that first that you have to use to get into the pool. Then they'll look at your the expression of interest, the scores that you have in that EOI. So, yes, they will still look at occupations and industries and things like that. But when you have a community endorsement and you're, ranked fairly high with points, then you've got a better chance through that stream. But remember, your employer needs to support you. The community needs to support you with that endorsement. And then you're competing against the other individuals. And remember, I've had clients who had a community endorsement through the rural renewal stream and then get an invitation to apply through the Alberta Opportunity Stream. So the province, they're the ones who make those decisions. Okay. I like Batman's response. He's reiterating what I was saying in the US, 100 years to get it processed. That's right. It's not even worth submitting the application. Okay. Okay, Leon Yang, you need to subscribe to my Express Entry course or book a consultation with me. So if I slide over here, try to find my one-page web here, the Canadian Immigration Institute has courses, and one of them is my Express Entry Masterclass. And so there should be a description, like a link in the description where you can click and you can join. But this, and we've got another masterclass tomorrow, but it is chock full of every single thing that you would want to know about the Express Entry process. So I encourage you to slide over there. You can also book a consult. But if you have 4 out of 9 duties, the question is, and just to read it for people that are listening on the podcast, who and what determine what NOC do I fit? If I have 4 out of 9 duties qualified in both NOC codes, which one should I choose? Employer reference letter. Okay, well, understand, Leon, this is something you're going to need to book a consult so that we can sort this out, because there's a lot of different factors at play in how you determine if you've actually performed the duties in the NOC. Substantial means right around 75% or close to. And if you don't have that, then you have to be able to make the case. Larger companies where you have positions that normally one person would do in a smaller company, but because it's so large, the positions are compartmentalized into little pieces. Sometimes you can make the case that it still fits without hitting the substantial number of the main duties. But generally speaking, like if you were 4 out of 9, I would rather see 7 or at the very least 6. But there's always going to be a position. There's always going to be a negotiation with your employer in terms of, well, I shouldn't say negotiation, but a discussion of, about, hey, I actually did this. Would you put this in the description in your reference letter? So those kinds of discussions I have with employers all the time, which then you might find that you actually have maybe 6 out of 9 instead of just 4 because of, you didn't properly describe some of the duties you actually performed for the company. Okay. My dog, you can't hear it over here, but he is snoring. He's just snoring away over here. All right. And this is a good point here, Chow. He says, even with high human capital, entrepreneurial profiles, hardworking will still need to be hanging on TR unless doing what the current trend asks. I wonder what happens when everyone learns French. Exactly. If everybody learns French, then it's just going to push the CRS scores even higher for English. The more people that learn French, the more the CRS scores are going to stay high. So, yes. Yes, Andrew. He says, on one hand, immigration focuses more on Francophone options, but shouldn't government spend a bit more teaching French to its Canadian folks? Well, they don't worry so much about that because Quebec, if people want to learn French, they can go to Quebec. I shouldn't say that they don't, because the government has actually issued funding to Francophone community groups all across the country in record numbers, higher than they do for the English language instruction. And so the government's already doing that to some extent. Okay. Let's see here. Huge backlogs. G2D2, good to see you again. Yeah, I don't know what their plan is. You could see that Prime Minister Carney indicated that in their like in their election campaign, in their policies and what they, their campaign promises, they emphasized that they were really going to focus on using technology, which is kind of like code for AI. And it's always scary because the quality of the decision making is really sacrificed when you have that. And so, but they're going to use AI to help process and get the numbers down. Okay, Bodek over on X, good to see you connecting in. What can I do? I got refusal for study permit extension inside Canada. Book a consult, Bodek, and you can connect with me and we can discuss it. All you have to do, I'll get over here to this one. There we go. All you have to do is go over here to our website, click on speak to a lawyer, and you can book a consult. Super easy. And then we can chat about the options, but do it quick because you only have a certain amount of time to deal with it. Okay. All right, let's see here. Okay. So Gaurav says, can it be expected that the NOx mentioned in immigration levels plans for PR will change, or the high range are the max? Are there any quotes for temporary foreign workers in those streams leading to PR? The ultimate, we know that theoretically they're supposed to focus on trades. They're supposed to focus on their SAM, the education, the healthcare, those kinds of things. But we just have not seen anything. But I suspect as the government kind of restructures itself and gets in place, then we'll have the ability to move forward, and we should start to see more of those category-based draws. So once again, hang in there. Okay, Arinzi says, do IRCC have a separate department that process spousal sponsorship applications for PR, or are they mixed up with express entry? What's the time received AOR after application? Okay, so no, they're processed by a different group. And in Canada, we're seeing AORs come back in a little over a month. So, okay, Sanchita says, is 500 enough, or should I start studying French? Study French. Until you get an ITA, study French. Okay, Rupinder says, what is the benefit of having a real brother or sister as Canadian permanent resident? It's just 15 points. Don't you think those points should increase? No, 15 points makes a huge difference when you're looking to people hitting the cap, the maximum amount. That extra 15 points can literally push someone over the edge who maybe doesn't have perfect English, but they've got decent, like a CLB 9. And then with that sibling, it pushes them over the top. Oh, let's see here. Okay, Aurora, I'm going to actually ask you to book a consult and we can chat about this because that one's getting pretty specific. And yeah, we definitely need to talk about that at length so I understand the whole situation. Okay, here's a tough one. So Rupinder says, if someone is mid CRS, like in their 450s, mid 35, what should be their strategy? Learn French at any cost? Yes. Every single time you guys ask me now, what should I do? It's learn French. I'm going to go a little bit more, then we're going to wrap it up today. Let's see if there's any other ones. Okay, we'll pull this one up because it's consistent. Melissa says, hey, Mark, regarding the Francophone immigration program, if I have a job offer in Canada and if my last work experience was from my home country as a business owner, is that counted? That's something, once again, Melissa, you need to book a consult so that we can figure out which program you're specifically referring to. Okay. And this one, same thing, Christopher. You're asking, hey, can I fly? Is there something that I can do? You really need to book a consult because I don't want to give you any bad advice because I don't understand your exact situation. So I recommend you book a consult. Aurora, thank you. Appreciate that vote of confidence. Yeah, True North, I think you've got a shot at 503. You know, if you've maxed out on every possible aspect, I think you have a shot. I think so. It's just a matter of them starting to do more consistent rounds. Yeah. Okay, and this one, JM Martinez, I don't know. That's one I don't know as far as what you can do in terms of the Manitoba policy. I know that Alberta doesn't do it anymore, and I'm not sure if Manitoba still has it alive. Okay, Carla says, hi, Mark, should someone mention a U.S. tourist visa cancellation on their PR application, even though there is no specific question about that? Yes. Treat it as a refusal. Treat it as a refusal. Okay. This one as well. Forum is asking about whether or not his 10-year-old girl, after the refusal of a closed work permit, should stop going to school. And this forum, you need to book a consult. That's not something I can give you advice on, but you have to be really careful with that. Okay, Rakis says, in light of the 25 election and potential changes to immigration policies, what are the prospects for trade skilled workers such as carpenters to acquire permanent residence under express entry? Well, the Liberals have said that trades are a priority. They have to build houses. They have to. So those trades, and there are programs in place to help facilitate people who want to go back and get that education. It's still quite complex. It's not fully flushed out. Credential assessment, that's been also on their platform as a priority. Ensuring that people have their foreign credentials properly equated so that they can work in these trades, or other, industries for that matter. But I think at this stage, the policies, I think, are not going to be substantially different than what we have now, but they could potentially put more focus on those priority occupations, those priority industries that they've indicated. All right. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Alvin says, do you have partners who teach French? If you subscribe to my course and if you watch the YouTube channel, you will see that I have on the YouTube channel, let's see if we can find it here. I'll share. Oops, I keep pushing the wrong one. This one's the one I want to share. You can see here, if you search, and I just search French and I click on it, you will see that there are some good resources here. And you can see one of them is a lesson that I did with Jean K. And if we open up his little video here and we go to the description, you will see that there are links to a bunch of different options and programs that he has. So I encourage you to go check those out. So, yep. And he has another lesson that's very specific within the Express Entry Accelerator course, which is the sponsor of this little live stream. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Nope. Jimmy, I don't think that they will revamp it. Sure, they could tweak things. Like some people had said, hey, French was 75. Yeah, they could tweak things. They could even restore the job offer points. But at this stage, I don't think they're going to do any major revamping to Express Entry. Let's see here. Okay, Carla on Facebook, thanks for connecting in. Carla says, have you noticed any errors on the CRS tool calculator versus the Express Entry points awarded for French? I haven't, but people have indicated that there have been some errors. Like if we were to go through and to do the CRS calculator, and I think, I don't know, probably most people are aware of it. Let's go over here just so that people understand. Oh, once again, I keep pushing the wrong one here. So if we go to check your score here, and we fill this out, let's just do a quick little test. So I'll say I'll just go with I'm single. I am a young buck, 25 years old. I'll just give myself a master's here. Have you earned a Canadian diploma? Sure. I'll say it was a master's. We'll get all those points. Okay. Official language. Yes. And then I'm going to put both. I'm going to put CELPIP here. And then I'm going to say it's 9. Okay. We'll say it's that magical CLB 9 that we want. Okay, do you have language tests? Yes, and I'll go TEF. And then here, let's just max these out and see what it does, okay? Because I haven't seen it throw out those weird extra points like it used to. How many years do you have in Canada? We're going to say, it doesn't matter, we'll say 1. And how many of foreign? We'll say 1. And then certificate of qualification, don't care about that. Valid job offer, we don't care about that these days. Nomination, don't care. Okay, do you have a brother or sister? No. And then calculate your score. So let's take a look and see if it's pulling up crazy figures for French. So if we go down here to the bottom, let's see. Yep, it does. So that's a good question. This is something that they're rolling out right now. So this just traditionally was 50, now 75 points. I don't know what to say, you guys. It's crazy. It's crazy. It was there before and now it's back again. So once again, there's nothing more important than you can do than learn French right now, you guys. Okay. Let's see. So where do we have here? I think maybe we'll wrap up with that. Maybe we will wrap up with that. We've got a lot of questions. Remember, Alicia and Igor will be connecting in tomorrow. And I unfortunately have Shoulder problems. I've been playing too much pickleball. I went from I'd never picked up a paddle last summer, and some of my friends have been playing for a few years and wouldn't play with me because I wasn't good enough. So I just spent a lot of time practicing, and before my older, fatter days, I did a lot of athletics, a lot of sports, so it does tend to come pretty naturally to me. So I played so much, like I leveled up. So I was a 4.0 kind of plus player for pickleball, if you're familiar with the scoring system. But it came at a cost with my shoulder. So I have an ultrasound and an x-ray tomorrow, right at 10:45. So Alicia and Igor are going to be filling in for the podcast, for our live stream tomorrow at 10 a.m. So make sure that if you didn't get your questions answered today, that you definitely go check it out. Okay. I think I've covered everything that I can today. And I know that there's a lot of people that are, had questions, but we're going to wrap it up today. If you've been kind of under a rock, or if, don't have a clue of what's been happening in the world, as of last night, the election occurred and we have a liberal minority government, just so close to getting a majority. In fact, right now they're sitting at 169 votes. If they cross over, I think it's 172. If they cross over 172, then they would have a majority. And the NDP are still hanging on at 7. They've got potentially 2 more. That would give them 9. The Liberals are leading in, 11 here to give them 169. If this continues, they could have as much as 169. And the Conservatives are kind of projected to get about 144. But what that means is the Liberals, if they still link up with the NDP, will still be able to do whatever the heck they want in Canada in terms of immigration policy. And that's kind of the takeaway. All right. Kind of the takeaway. Okay. So there we have it. And any of you that, need assistance, we're here to help you. If you have not yet subscribed to the Express Entry Accelerator, please do it. That course is awesome. And I will be, once you subscribe to it, I'll be going live for the masterclass tomorrow evening. And then, you have access for life to the content and all upgrades. So definitely worth checking out. But we're here to help you. We're here to support you in whatever way we can. And I think to sum up, it's kind of business as usual. I think they're going to revert back to, their policies. They're going to try to give lip service to building houses, and hopefully they can do that to help, but I think they're probably going to, at least, in maybe the moderate to midterm, they're going to return back to their policies before. So, all right. Okay. Thanks so much, you guys. And